and this is episode 18 of the Lifestyle Entrepreneur Podcast. And my next guest is John Lee Dumas, where he's going to share how podcasting can establish you as an expert and how to grow your business using a podcast. Welcome to the Lifestyle Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Kris Gilbertson, and I'm an author, speaker, and a coach to teaching you how to launch your own successful podcast. And the reason I designed this show is to bring you the top lifestyle entrepreneur experts from all over the world for them to share their key strategies that they've used to launch their own businesses and allow them to live life on their own terms. So tune in every Friday for new episodes and come on over and join the Lifestyle Entrepreneur community at www.lifestyleacademy.com. There you're going to receive VIP training from specific guests from the podcast, along with being able to watch all of the interviews. And I'll also be making it really easy for you to implement these strategies that you're hearing by sending you what I like to call the Lifestyle Cliff Notes on the best of the best lessons learned on the podcast. So let's get started. All right, so before we get started with the show, I just want to thank everyone who is subscribing and leaving awesome reviews in iTunes. I'm so excited that people are enjoying these interviews. And I'm excited to announce First Fridays. So what I'm going to be doing the first Friday of every month, we're going to have a raffle for those of you that have subscribed to the podcast and then also left a review. And it'll be a raffle for $25 gift cards from iTunes, Amazon, eBay, all over the place. So all you simply need to do is just subscribe to the podcast in iTunes and then leave us a review, and your name will go in a hat, and we'll announce that the first Friday of every month. And we got another weekly shout out. This one goes out to Heart of Heart, and it says, Kris is awesome, insightful, practical, amazing. Keep this good content coming, Kris. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and enjoying the show. And we've got plenty of more incredible episodes coming up. So let's get right at it right now. So I'm so excited for our guest today. His name is John Lee Dumas, and he is the host and founder of the international podcast sensation Entrepreneur on Fire, which is in the top 10 business podcasts in the iTunes marketplace. And he airs a show every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, and he highlights top entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires and authorities in the world of business. And just to give you an idea of a few of his guests, he's had Tim Ferriss, Barbara Corcoran, Guy Kawasaki, Seth Godin, Chris Brogan. I mean, just to name a few. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And what I love about his show is that John, what he's created is just a thriving tribe. And at the end of the show, he has what's called the lightning round, where he asks 5 questions to each guest that pulls out priceless nuggets of information and tips to success to help his listeners grow their businesses. So I'm so excited to have John here today. So welcome. How are you doing today, John?
Kris, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. And you forgot to mention yourself as an Entrepreneur on Fire guest.
Yes, I just recently have been an Entrepreneur on Fire guest, which I'm so honored. It was a blast. John's show is amazing. So fun to be a part of. Yeah. So I'd love for you to share your journey and how Entrepreneur on Fire ignited.
I'd love to share that. And it just all starts back in a small town in Maine. I'm just a country boy, grew up for the first 18 years of my life, went to high school, graduated with an ROTC scholarship to Providence College. So I trained as a cadet for 4 years in college. Then I got out, was commissioned as an officer, and served our country for 8 years, 4 years active, 4 years in the reserves. Highlighted with a 13-month tour of duty in Iraq. So it was a very intense and growing experience for me. And when I entered the quote-unquote civilian world, I really decided to try a bunch of different things because I didn't have a passion or any kind of drive that I found at that point. And I just knew that only by getting into the business would I be able to really find my business. So I tried a bunch of things. I tried corporate finance. I tried real estate, both residential and commercial, tech startups. I really tried a bunch of different things. Never really found my groove. But one thing that I always found was I was driving a lot. I was always in the car. I was always at the gym. I was consuming content all the time via the radio, talk show, or listening to CDs. And that got old pretty quick. So luckily, back in 2009, I stumbled upon podcasting, fell in love with it. It was just this great targeted, on-demand, passionate content, and I couldn't get enough. So I downloaded all the big boys like your Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, Joe Kramer, all of those people, and just started listening to that content and really consuming that. And then I started finding some of the more private podcasts, like your Andrew Warner of Mixergy or your Davis Siteman Garland of Rise to the Top, and really loving those. And the years went by, and I was continuing just to not find my groove in any of these different niches. And then one day I was just driving in my car. I ran out of content because most of these shows come out weekly or once every 2 weeks or so, twice a month. And they were great. They had great content, but it wasn't nearly enough because I was in the car for hours every day. I was at the gym on the treadmill, and I wanted more and more and more. And so I had that aha moment, Kris. I said, if I need more content, there's people like me who want more content, who want that fresh podcast waiting for them every single day. There's a niche here. I want to fill that void. So I set out that day. It was June of 2012 to create Entrepreneur on Fire, the only daily podcast that interviews inspiring and successful entrepreneurs. I went down to Blog World in New York City back in June of 2012, met some incredible entrepreneurs who ended up being my first guests, Pat Flynn, Derek Halpern, David Risley, and many others. Spent that whole summer just prepping and getting ready, doing 40 interviews for my launch date, which was September 20th. I launched, started as that 5-day-a-week that you mentioned, and as of about a month ago, I've officially transferred to a 7-day-a-week show now. So I'm doing 30 podcasts a month with incredible entrepreneurs who you've mentioned, and just getting some exciting numbers. I mean, we just hit 175,000 downloads in the month of March. I'm expecting bigger things in April because the snowball effect with podcasting is so much fun. You're experiencing it right now. I'm experiencing it right now. So that is the birth of Entrepreneur on Fire.
Oh, brilliant. I love that story. Congratulations with
Thank
all
you.
the massive success. Your show is just rocking it. And I love your journey too, is that you dove into the land of podcasting and learned about it, and then just came in and dominated with the vision of what you wanted to create. So I'd love for you to share a little bit, because I notice a lot with the events that, we go to a lot of events all the time, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs in all different fields. And I think we all have the common denominator that we didn't quite know how to target in and hone in on our passion. And so you had that aha moment when podcasting came to you, but can you share a little bit more about that and how, if you had to go back and kind of redo that, knowing what you know now, how you could hone in faster on what you really wanted to do?
Well, the biggest thing that I really allowed to hold me back was being a little nervous and scared about approaching who I wanted as guests. Being somebody from residential real estate, commercial real estate, corporate America with John Hancock, being in the finance sector, I didn't know anybody in this crazy new world, like a blog world or New Media Expo. It was completely new to me. So I would hear these people, and they were just minor celebrities in my mind. And I would say, wow, why would they want to hear from me? Why would they want to potentially give me 25 minutes of their time for a podcast that hasn't even launched yet? So I really started with that mentality. I didn't have an audience. I just had a dream and a vision, and I let that hold me back for way too long. So if I could go back, I tell myself, listen, it is an extremely friendly community. Everybody is out here looking to help each other because there is an infinite amount of space, time, clients, love in this internet community that we live in. And it's so obvious every time I go to an event, every time I meet someone like you, Kris, where we just connect, we hit it off. We're not competitors. I mean, we are literally just combining our forces and combining our audiences to better ourselves. And it's so much fun. So I would say, listen, don't wait. Just reach out to that person. I get emails every single day from people, so tentative. John, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're so busy, but I just wanted to say thank you and run this quick idea. And I email back sometimes within 5 minutes if I happen to be in my email box at that time. And they're flabbergasted because they think that I have some virtual assistant do it. But this is why I created Entrepreneur on Fire, is to get that interaction, to inspire people and to motivate people. So those emails keep me going. So to everybody that's out there listening, I say just reach out to that person. Write an email today to Kris, to somebody. Kris, sorry if this floods your email inbox. But reach out to people and just share with them, connect with them, because believe me, they're just people. They love that connection, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I love that. That's brilliant. I mean, everybody's approachable at the end of the day. And it's all the stuff we make up in our minds. It's ourselves that hold ourselves back from getting out there. And I love to, I don't like competition. That's not a word I've ever had in my vocabulary. It's co-opetition, working together and coming, and growing together, because, there's enough business out there for everybody. And the difference is we all bring a different perspective that other people relate with and can connect with. So I think that's brilliant. So with where you're at right now with your business, share with us some of the trends that you see that are happening in the social media and the blog world, because you've just dove right in and really exploded. So tell us, what are some of the things that you kind of see for the future?
Well, I did just dive in, and man, I'll tell you, it's been a crazy 8-9 months. It really has, because this aha moment happened, click. And the next thing I knew, I had left my job. I had jumped off that cliff into the abyss. I had taken my entrepreneurial leap, hook, line, and sinker. 100% of my time, energy, focus was on Entrepreneur on Fire. It was really that quick. And I was fortunate to be in the situation to be able to do that, and I did. So I really just focused on that, and I started driving forward. And like I said, I went to Blog World in June of 2012 and had an amazing time. And I looked at the people that were speaking, and I said, wow, these are incredible people. They're so friendly. They're successful. They're doing something they love. They're passionate about. And man, I'll tell you, that was one of my proudest moments, was that 6 months later, I was asked to speak at New Media Expo by Blog World in Vegas, and I was able to get up on the same stage as people that I'd seen speak just 6 months earlier, who I thought were on top of the world, and now I'm speaking to hundreds of people that are just hanging on every word that I'm saying, and it was just a great moment for me, and it was a great moment for me to see the podcasting world and where that was going. And to answer your question specifically, I just had Noah Shannock, who is the CEO of Stitcher Radio, on Entrepreneur on Fire. And we had a great conversation. And one of the things that he revealed that's so exciting is that they just signed deals with Ford, with GM, Chrysler, Chevrolet. 2014, these cars rolling off the lot are going to have Sirius XM radio, and they're going to have Stitcher radio in the dashboard. So you can turn to the Kris Gilbertson podcast. You can turn to Entrepreneur on Fire and stream us live from your dashboard. I mean, that's incredibly exciting. That's going to be incredibly powerful. That's going to change the landscape. I mean, talk about 175,000 downloads a month in over 140 countries. We're going to be talking about, $10 million a month in over 145 countries, because that is just going to change the landscape. And sponsors are starting to take notice. I've just locked down 3 huge sponsors for Entrepreneur on Fire: Audible, LegalZoom, and Squarespace. Both all approached me. They want to partner up. They want to be a part of reaching my audience, Fire Nation, because I'm getting that massive download number every single month, and they want to reach that audience, which is very targeted, because like your audience, Kris, they're wannabe entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurs or small business owners who are looking to either take that leap or just enhance their business as it stands now. So people are catching on about the intimacy of podcasting, how you can just build authority in a niche so quickly now, and just the value of that captive audience. Because Kris, people are listening right now on that jog. Keep on running. They're listening right now when they're sitting in traffic, dreading getting to work, because they're looking to consume this content to give them inspiration, motivation, and ideas to make their leap. They're a captive audience. You're not captive when you're at work trying to skim a blog post and you're getting emails and phone calls and people are stopping by your desk. That's not captive. What people are doing right now is captive, and I love that about podcasting.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. I mean, just what you're talking about. I have I don't even have this anymore, but I used to always put the blog posts in a bookmark. Yeah. And, I'd have 100 blog posts that, I'm going to come back and read that, and I'm going to do that. But I know. But the podcasts are always streaming. They're always available for people whenever they want, where they want. It's on demand. And it's so funny that with the Stitcher Radio, that's phenomenal. I remember last year when I saw a press release about them working on that and getting that out there. I was so excited because it really makes it even approachable for anybody, no matter what. Even though, Android phones or iPhone, doesn't matter what you're on, you can have access to podcasts. But it's making, even when large companies, Fortune 100 companies like that, are making it easier for people to get in touch with the experts and consume content. That's really exciting. Yeah, I know. It's great. And the other thing, too, that I love that you're talking about is with the power of a podcast. And I just lost my train of thought here. Let me see if I can bring it back here. There's so many exciting things going on. Well, I'll come back to it. But so tell me, so obviously you're avid with your podcast. So if people are wanting to get started with their own podcast, what are your tips and advice to help them? Because this is the number one question I get is, what do I name my show? What do I talk about? And what's the format I should produce? So share your insights and your tips to success.
Well, take Kris's course, obviously. That's a no-brainer. And while you do that, you should also buy my book, Podcast Launch, which I just released in the Amazon store. It's the really highly ranked podcast book right now. I have over 60 5-star reviews. So, I mean, those are two great resources that anybody can use right now for an incredibly great value to get out there and start their podcast. Because that's the most important thing, is just start. Literally, in June of 2012, I didn't know a thing about podcasting besides how to listen to them. That's all I knew. I joined Cliff Ravenscraft's podcast mastermind and just started diving into it, hook, line, and sinker, and literally became an expert over the summer, because that's all I did. And anybody can become an expert that wants to, but there's no need to become an expert. You don't have to launch a podcast, because we're busy people. I became an expert because it was all I did, and that was my focus. But for those people that are business owners, that you just want this to be a portion of your business, you can just really take in the information that you need and create a podcast on a system that works very cheaply, very easily, and you're going to reach an incredibly new and diverse demographic because of iTunes, because of Stitcher Radio, because every single day, thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people are going to that site and they're searching specific content. And when people do that, it's one reason why Entrepreneur on Fire has such explosive growth, is because now people are going and they're clicking on the business podcast, and Entrepreneur on Fire is almost always ranked as a top 15 or a top 10 business podcast. It's one of the first that they see when they get to the page, and it's right there. And one thing that I did love, Kris, and I want to thank you for this, is that during your webinar, you pointed out the Entrepreneur on Fire logo and how it does stand out in the iTunes store, which is really important. And you do a great job explaining that. And so people are now just finding Entrepreneur on Fire organically, because it's one of the only podcasts in the top 15 that's not a corporate podcast. It's not a Wall Street Journal or a Susie Orman or an APM Marketplace. It's obvious that it was created by myself. Pat Flynn has a podcast that's in the top 10 all the time as well, Smart Passive Income. But besides the two of us, I mean, there's very few podcasts that are up in that kind of ranking. So it's just great visual, and it's a great opportunity for people to get into the iTunes store and be found organically because of a keyword search. And you know about the keyword searches and how easily implementable they are in iTunes.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, and with the success that you've had from your show, it's lining the right pieces together for your show to make it pop, and having a strategy and a plan. Because I mean, like, my personality is very fire. Like, let's just get started and get out there and get going, because I know how I am. But at the same time, you still want to have a little bit of a game plan of how to set yourself up for success in iTunes to capitalize on what's going on iTunes, because it really is. It's one of the hottest trends right now in 2013 and going forward. And it's even to test. I just remembered what I forgot to say before, is that Denver radio, there's 2 radio stations, The Mix and another station. All they refer back to, John, is their podcast. They don't say listen to our show live, anything. It's all go to the podcast. So what's really cool is the shift in consumer behavior that's happening now. People want, like you said, on demand. They're listening in the gym. I mean, I have it on my phone all the time, and I'm like at the grocery store. I always have my earbuds in, because you can listen to it whenever you want. So I think I love that. That's just incredible.
I can't fold laundry or do the dishes without a podcast playing. I can't do it anymore. I need to have it.
I have it on my Apple TV now when I'm out doing stuff. I love it. It's like, this is so great. And I love it too because of the personal development revolution. It's just getting bigger, stronger. And I'd love for you to chat about, because you're in the business category, but what do you think about because a lot of people ask me, well, will this work for my business? What do you think about any business getting in iTunes and the value of partnering up with iTunes?
I think this is for any business. There's so many categories in iTunes, and there's so many people that are going there for different reasons. Just like when people used to go to Google and search terms, or go to YouTube. Nobody looked at YouTube as a search engine 5 years ago. Now it's the number 2 search engine in the world, and iTunes is on that similar trajectory. And in fact, in my book, Podcast Launch, my example is about somebody who loved gardening that started a podcast about gardening, and then how she was able to grow a business from that podcast. And that is not a true story. It just came to me, and I know that it would work because that's just an example of how people love podcasting, because it's about what they're passionate about. And we all have different passions. So every business, every niche, every different industry can find their niche, and you're going to find your audience. And the reason that's great about podcasting is you're not regulated to a regional audience, to just people in your town, your city, your state. You literally are reaching people in the world. So you have billions of people potentially that could find your podcast. And of those billions of people, you're going to have a certain percentage that resonate with your actual content. And those people can become rabid fans and increase your demographic, and wonderful things can happen from there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you get this all the time where people email you in and they're like, John, I feel like I'm best friends with you. I mean, it's the connection. Yeah. I love it. I know. It's so great.
I feel like we're best friends, Kris.
I know. We just literally met, literally not very long ago at all. So it really is. The power of connection is phenomenal with it. So tell us about, let's shift gears here. And if you, so obviously you've been through a lot of different scenarios in business and, finding your passion. But for starting your business again, if you had to start over, similar to what you ask on your show, I ask this a lot with my guests, is what would you do today differently, and how would you launch your business knowing what you know now for the future if you had to start from scratch?
I would start really from the very beginning of focusing on being everywhere. When I was started, I was really focused on the podcast and really just getting that out. And that's very important because a lot of things can slip through the cracks if you don't really take care of your main focus. But at the same time, there's no reason why you can't be building a full platform. Everybody should have a website. That should be their headquarters. And everybody should have social media. Get your Twitter account up there, and your Facebook and your Google Plus up there, because every listener likes to interact in a different way, and they should have the opportunity to find you and interact with you in the way that they like to do. So if someone loves to tweet, they should be able to tweet you. If someone loves to go on Facebook, they should be able to like your Facebook page. So I would really integrate a much more full system. I just recently got on YouTube. That's a huge opportunity for people. I don't do a video podcast, but I found a way to get on YouTube by just taking the audio from my podcast, doing a great screenshot of the About Me page of like Seth Godin, and then recording that, uploading it to YouTube. So, it's not this super appealing video that's going to wow people, but people are going to find out about Entrepreneur on Fire because of that. And a certain number of those people are going to be like, wow, this, is something that I'm really enjoying playing in the background because nothing's going on, but it's great content, it's great audio. Let me go check this guy out. And then they become a subscriber to my iTunes account. And that's my main focus, is just being everywhere to just increase my subscribers, increase my downloads, increase my audience, because I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. The tagline of Entrepreneur on Fire is inspiring millions. And that's literally my goal.
Yeah, I love it. It's fantastic. And the biggest nugget out of that I love is that it's repurposing your content, doing one piece of content and then using all the platforms to get it out there. So it's not like you're creating that much extra work for yourself, but you're actually getting it out across the board.
Repurposing is a great word.
Yeah, and really just keeping it simple, because I know that's the biggest thing I see, and myself included in other businesses I've started. If you don't stay consistent with it and you don't have that passion there to stay consistent with it, it's not going to happen anyway. So you're just going to have loose content out there. Right. So what other tips of advice can you help for brand new entrepreneurs getting started and not quite sure what their unique message is, what to do?
Well, I don't know if you can see, I'll duck a little bit, but there's a quote over my head. Now, it's a pretty good story about this quote. I just recently got this, but I had a guy that reached out to me and said, John, I love Entrepreneur on Fire. You inspire me every single day. I want to do something to show my thanks. I own a sign company. Episode 150 of Entrepreneur on Fire was actually, we turned the tables, and one of my guests interviewed me using my format. So it was really fun. We had a good time doing it. And my quote that I used was this quote behind me, which was, and I'm going to be pretty close on it, but it was, try not to become a man of success, but become a man of value first. And that's by Albert Einstein. And that's really how I live my life with Entrepreneur on Fire. And that's the suggestion and the recommendation I would give to any entrepreneurs listening is don't try to become successful. Don't try to put the train first. What you really want to do is become valuable, provide value, provide as much value as you can, great content, free content, however you want to provide that content, and success will follow that huge amount of value that you're giving. And that's what I found at Entrepreneur on Fire. I'm giving so much value every single day for free to people all around the world, and success is following that. If I turned that around, that wouldn't have happened. So lead with value. Provide as much value as possible. That's my best tip for all entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's so true because I think people get caught up in producing the income and the money, and it gets things out of whack for how they want to start their business. And I love to follow up with that too. Serve the few, and the many will come. I think so many people want to get into this space and already be big, and it starts with taking care of the few people when you get started, because that is what really builds your success and grows that forward if you can really create those great testimonials and those stories. So,
well, let me add something to that, Kris, and because one of the biggest questions that I get is, John, like, how have you gotten some of your biggest guests? Like, how did you get Seth Godin? How did you get Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, Chris Brogan, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss? And I get beginner podcasters all the time saying, John, how'd you do this? How can I do it? And the simple thing is like you said, you need to start with your first building block. You need to build that foundation first. And that's what I did. I went out, I interacted with, great entrepreneurs who were successful, that weren't these incredible all-stars like your Seth Godins or Tim Ferrisses, but they were really successful in their niche. I started with them. I created great content. I launched my podcast. I got a great following because I was consistent with my format, with my release schedule. My content was always there, and I built an audience because of that. So a couple months later, I could approach Seth Godin, Tim Ferriss, and say, hey, guys, I have over 100,000 downloads a month now of very targeted entrepreneurs. They're very engaged. Here's my numbers. Here's my ranking in iTunes. Will you give me 20 minutes of your time to talk to Fire Nation? And at that point, it's worth their while. And now I'm able to go forward and say, hey, I have 175,000 unique downloads a month. Eric Ries of the Lean Startup. Is it worth your time to come talk to Fire Nation? Because probably, a quarter of those people are going to go buy your book after this interview. So of course, Eric Ries is like, yeah, I'll come on the show. And he's been a guest. So, that's what you're going to do. You're going to start. It's not going to happen overnight. Yes, things have happened very quickly for me at Entrepreneur on Fire, relatively. Again, it's been because I've built from the ground up organically.
Exactly. And there is a process to it. So I'd love for you to share too, is for people that I think, sometimes they get the first no if they got a no, and when they're putting requests out for interviews or anything, and then they get discouraged and they're like, oh no, I can't do this anymore. What are your advice for that? Because not everybody can build a platform as quickly as possible, or have the ability to just quit their job and start a business full time. So what are your tips for building it as you fly it for that?
Listen to Entrepreneur on Fire, because every single guest that I have on, especially the high-level guests, the ones that we've just mentioned, have had an incredible amount of rejection, an incredible amount of failure. Seth Godin was rejected hundreds and hundreds of times on his books, even after he was a New York Times bestseller. So, you need to just realize the rejection is part of the game. It's not your fault. It's not the person who's rejecting you's fault. It could just be a situation at the time. I emailed Seth Godin 6 times, and he said, very politely, no, not now, until one day I randomly emailed him and he said, how about tomorrow, 1 p.m.? And I was like, eeks. So you never know. Just keep swinging that bat. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Just make it happen.
Love it. Great advice. So what other tips or insights can you share from what you've learned now in being a media entrepreneur?
Well, I can definitely speak to podcasting in general because that is really where my expertise lies. And it really comes down to a couple of things. Consistency has to be there. You really need to decide on a media plan, on a podcasting plan, on a webinar plan that's consistent, that people grow to know, like, and expect so that they can trust you. So people know that Entrepreneur on Fire is going live every single morning at 3 a.m. So they know that when they wake up, there's going to be a podcast waiting for them for their drive to work, for their trip to the gym, for their run along the beach, when they're walking their dog. So it becomes habit. It's been ingrained in them now. Like if I don't release an episode, which I haven't done yet since my launch, like people would freak out because it's part of their habit now. Just like people freak out when they don't have coffee in the morning because it's part of their habit. We're very habit-forming creatures. And so I've really taken that and made Entrepreneur on Fire a habit for a lot of people who are looking to be inspired by the stories and the journeys of successful and inspiring entrepreneurs. Number 2 is content. It always comes back to content because no matter how persistent you are, no matter how great a guest you have, no matter what you have going on with your platform, if your content is not great, people aren't going to come back. They're not going to subscribe. They're not going to recommend it to their friends, their family, their clients. And the exact opposite is happening with Entrepreneur on Fire because it's great content. Not necessarily because of me, I just provide the forum, but because of the guests that I bring on, I set the stage for them to provide great content. And then people hear it and they tell their friends, they tell their coworkers, they talk about it, they keep coming back, they're subscribers. So lead with quality. Quality is king, and I know you like to say it too. Connection is queen. And do you want to finish that quote?
I'm going to let you say it all together. John just made this up.
And the queen rules the
brilliant.
castle. So,
exactly.
Content is king, connection is queen, and the queen rules the castle.
Love it. Could have said it better myself. John, you're brilliant. So I want to say off of that because John is really quick. If you haven't listened to his show yet, you have to get over there and get on the Entrepreneur, join the Fire Nation because he is so brilliant at the questions he asks, how he engages his guests, and how he really pulls it out of the people that he interviews. So John, I want you to share that because I know a lot of people who are starting their own shows, and this can apply to how you write content too. The questions you ask, the better questions you ask, the better answers you get. So share with us kind of the breakdown of how you launched your show with your format, but really how you were able to engage your guests through those questions.
So I'm a big believer with podcasting specifically because I was first a podcast listener and I knew what I wanted. I was my avatar. I knew that when I pressed the play button, I wanted to know what I was going to get. So I wanted to set Entrepreneur on Fire up that way. So I wanted to create a very consistent format, not one that would be boring, but one that would, when people press the play button, they know what they're going to get. And because I'm telling people's journeys and everybody has a very unique journey and take on that journey, I knew each podcast was going to be very different, but it was going to have a format that people could grow to know, like, and trust. And so every single Entrepreneur on Fire episode starts with a success quote because I really feel like that's a great way to get the show off on a great note. People look forward to it. If they're driving to work in the morning, you can start their day. If they're taking that jog, it gives them a little extra pep in their step. And then we move into a failure because I really like to start with a failure because it's normally further back in their journey. So it takes us from that failure point forward throughout the rest of their journey. So we talk about the failure and about how they overcame that failure and the lessons they learned from that. And then we move into an aha moment when they had that light bulb that went off. And Kris, you shared how you had a lot of little aha moments that led to your big aha moment, your decision of exactly what you wanted to do with Kris Gilbertson Media. And then we talk about what's exciting them right now, what their vision for the future is, and then we end with a 5-question lightning round. So people stick around for the end of Entrepreneur on Fire. And in fact, Stitcher Radio has great statistical reporting, and I have an 87% completion rate from start to finish, which is just blows average podcast out of the water, according to my friends at Stitcher, is what they tell me, because people stick around for the lightning rounds because they get to grow an intimate connection with the guest. Like, people started listening to you, Kris, and they're like, wow, this is a cool girl. She knows what she's talking about. She's fun. I've listened to Entrepreneur on Fire before, so I know that she's going to be recommending her favorite book, her favorite resource. She's going to tell me what she would do if she woke up in a brand new world and didn't know anybody. I want to know her answers to that. So I always have that at the end. So it's something that people are always waiting for. So that is exactly how I set up Entrepreneur on Fire. And I think it's a great format. And people can apply that in any industry, in any niche that they want to launch into.
Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant. And I love it. I love the format of the show and how it leads all together. It's an awesome journey. And so kind of leading up to that, since you had Seth Godin on your show that talks about tribes, and you've built a thriving community and a thriving tribe. And that's what going forward really is what is crucial to success. One, if you are a mediapreneur that wants to bring on sponsors in the future, but also even just for local business owners, you want to create that thriving community of people that are engaged in your brand, products, or services. So can you share some tips on how to create that thriving tribe and what you did that was enabled you to do that so quickly?
Well, I really do love my tribe. I call them Fire Nation. I refer to them multiple times throughout the interview to make them feel part of the process. I always ask for engagement. I always engage them when they email. I'm just always kind of like building up this tribe that I like to call Fire Nation. And so for me, it was really just about involving them and making them part of the process. And using my email list to get out there and ask Fire Nation and my Facebook account and my Twitter account just to say, what do you guys like about the show? Like, what questions do you want? And I've changed certain things because of responses that I've gotten and got some really good feedback from those changes, because I really like to engage, and it's all about engaging, because as you love the word connection, Kris, I love that word. It's about creating that connection, and there's no better connection you can make than by actually engaging, interacting, and then implementing some of those connection engagements that you're making. So I just really think there's nothing you can do these days that's better than actually reaching out, touching somebody. And that's the great thing about podcasting is it's not words on a page, Kris. It's not just people reading an actual post. It's about them hearing my voice, your voice, in their heads, through their earbuds, through their car speakers, and developing this relationship with us. And I know you've mentioned it before. I think it might have been during the time I interviewed you, but I get emails all the time. John, this might sound weird, but I feel like we're best friends. Like, you've never met me. I've never reached out to you before, but I listen to you every single day. And I just feel like we're buddies. I feel like we're hanging out on a daily basis. And so you want to use that connection that you have, that intimacy, and really just continue to encourage it, stoke the flames of Fire Nation.
Yeah, I love it. So what's the evolution for Fire Nation going forward and Entrepreneur on Fire?
That's a great question. It really is. Right now, I'm so focused on just continuing to put out 30 plus podcasts a month. So that's a lot of work.
Congratulations. You're doing phenomenal with that.
But it's very manageable. I'm a military guy. So every Monday is when I do all of my interviews. So it does leave the rest of my week open to pursue other avenues. I've written my book. I'm creating an elite mastermind. I'm working on products and services of my own. I've spoken at different engagements, and I have more speaking gigs here in 2013 that I'm really looking forward to. I love getting up in front of people. I love sharing my journey. I'm starting to do another venture that's going to involve military veterans, and a great way to integrate the military, actual active duty officers and soldiers into the civilian world, something that never existed when I made my transition, which made it very difficult, and something that doesn't exist right now. So I'd love to bridge that gap and use podcasting and use social media and just use all these things available. I'd love to get into webinars. I couldn't be a bigger fan of it. I know the value of it. It's like at the top of my to-do list. It's something I know I would love, but at the same time, you can only do so many things. So that's something I'm going to be getting into as soon as it's feasible. So that's, continuing to make Entrepreneur on Fire a viable business. I mean, I just sold out all of my sponsorship slots for the Q2, April April, May, and June are completely sold out for my sponsors, Audible, LegalZoom, and Squarespace. So that's turned Entrepreneur on Fire into a 5-figure business monthly. And so the projections out are just exciting. And it just shows people the value that actual sponsors are putting on podcasts, and the fact that you can really make this a viable business and a business that's bringing in a lot of money. So it's been a lot of fun, and I just look forward to continue to bring that forward.
Oh, brilliant. I'm so excited for what you're doing with the military side of that as well.
Thank you.
I think that's I see that a lot. My brother's actually in the Air Force, and so I've seen with other people transitioning and doing different things. He's still in, but I've seen a lot of that. So thank you for serving as well too, and I'm really excited for you on that. I was going to go another route here, but I wanted to bring up with monetization for podcasts, because this question, I'm sure you get this all the time too, is can I really build a business from this? And you and I both launched our businesses from our podcast. So we're very unique that way. And so I'd love for you to share about how to go about the right way to bring on a sponsor, and then some other ideas of how you've been able to monetize your show.
Well, it's not easy. And I mean, people should really go into that knowing that there's no real clear path to podcasting, which is truly why I believe that I was able to come onto the scene out of nowhere with no online presence whatsoever. I wasn't a Chris Brogan that had this massive presence and decided to launch his podcast back in January of 2013. Like, I was John Dumas, who had never even, stepped a foot into the online world prior to Entrepreneur on Fire, which didn't even launch until September 20th of 2012. So everything I've done has been from the podcast. And like I said, because of the no clear path to monetization, I believe it was wide open. I was able to come in, just focus on crushing a daily podcast, building a massive audience as quick as possible. And people have jumped all over it. And my download numbers reflect that. And now there's a lot of people that are coming out, and like Lewis Howes, Amy Porterfield, Chris Brogan, really big names have launched their podcast just in 2013 because they see the value of doing so. So, when I launched, it was really right before people were like, oh, there is actually some ways to make money and to build your brand and to build your audience in podcasting. And Entrepreneur on Fire is proof of that, because all I've done is just build a massive audience. And then I was approached by those sponsors I previously mentioned, who are turning Entrepreneur on Fire into a 5-figure monthly business for the foreseeable future. So that's just been a really fun part of monetizing Entrepreneur on Fire with sponsors. But I've also done it in other ways, like with my book that's went out. My book is definitely bringing in a lot of decent revenue on a weekly, monthly basis. It's all through Amazon, so you get to keep 70% of the book sales from there. So that's real money that comes in every time you get a book sale. With like traditional publishing, you'd get maybe 15 cents per book sold. Now I'm getting, $4 per book sold. I mean, that's a big difference. So it's a lot of fun in that areas. Again, I'm, looking at masterminds, I'm speaking, this has all come from podcasting. So there's so many ways. I'm doing some joint ventures with some of my past guests, because I've built relationships with these guys. I'm coming out with another book called Entrepreneur on Fire, Conversations with Visionary Entrepreneurs, that I'm really excited about. So, I mean, and that's in partnership with a past guest who's like, John, I love what you're doing. I own a publishing company. Like, let's turn this into a product. And that's just a connection that I made because I interviewed him. And to kind of close this thought, it's one of the reasons why Entrepreneur on Fire has been so successful is because of my business model. I mean, Kris, every single day I wake up and a new interview is live with an incredible and inspiring entrepreneur. So my first action every day is to email that entrepreneur and say, hey, Kris, your interview just went live today. You obviously crushed the interview. You shared an amazing journey. I'd be honored if you would share your journey with your audience. And so every single day, Entrepreneur on Fire is being exposed to a massive audience of that interviewees who have never heard of Entrepreneur on Fire before. And a certain percentage of people listen to the podcast, and a certain percentage of those people become fans and subscribers because they really love it and they found out about it for the first time because of that. So that's the value of podcasting.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for you, what you've created and what you're doing, and just the opportunity that this allows for everyone to step in and really to create that voice in the marketplace and get heard and be found. And it really is true. There's so many top people now stepping in with their podcast. It's like coming back around, which is so exciting. I love it. So do you have any other tips or advice that you'd love to share?
The biggest tip and piece of advice that past guests of mine, past entrepreneurs have shared with me and really resonates on every single level, and is one thing that I love to say when I'm ever asked this question, is in fact the answer that I always give about why were you able to find success? Like, what was the key ingredient? And it always just goes back to that part in the journey when that entrepreneur decided to just start. They stop with the excuses. They stop saying, I'm getting into the game too late. John Dumas is already, taking all the listeners with Entrepreneur on Fire. I mean, it's all bullcrap. I mean, this is such a big, wide open world. When you stop with the excuses, when you stop being scared, when you just take that leap of faith, follow your passions, follow your dreams, be prepared for a rocky road. There's going to be valleys. There's going to be highs. There's going to be lows. But the key is just start. Now, I'm not saying, listen, don't go quit your job tomorrow. If you have responsibilities and mortgages and credit card bills and kids, don't do that. But you can start. You can wake up 30 minutes earlier and just do 30 minutes of work towards your passion. You can do it 30 minutes before bed at night. Instead of watching, not Shark Tank, because that's such a great show. But instead of watching like Survivor, take that time and just work towards improving your knowledge, your expertise in the different industries that you're into. In 6 months from now, you will be amazed at how much that 30 minutes, that hour a day that you've committed that you didn't even miss because you're doing it because you enjoy it, and it's just 30 minutes. You'll be amazed at the knowledge you've gained. And guess what? If you don't start, you'll be in the exact same place you are right now.
Yep. Exactly. Brilliant advice. Take massive action. Just get out there and do it. Move forward. I love it. That's how I've started all my businesses and just gotten out there. I've gotten over the fear, but you have to be able to do that to move forward, to actually get into what you really want to do. Because otherwise we just sit here and think about it all the time, and it doesn't allow us to actually understand where our passions really are. So I think that's brilliant advice. So where can everybody find out about you?
So my headquarters, as I recommend everybody having their own headquarters, is entrepreneuronfire.com. Entrepreneur is a very tricky word to spell. I still have a hard time spelling it. So you can get there by going to eofire.com. Check us out. We have a lot of great resources on that page. The show notes of every guest that I've had with their recommended resources, their recommended book. It's all there. You can find me on the social media platforms or just email me at john@entrepreneuronfire.com.
Excellent. Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and be on our show here. And I look forward to having you back in the future, and have a wonderful day.
Absolutely, Kris. Thank you.
And I hope you enjoyed that episode. I'd love to get your feedback here for the Lifestylepreneur podcast right in iTunes. Simply leave us a 5-star and a review letting us know what you like, who you're interested in hearing more from, and what topics you really want help with in your business, that I can bring on those key experts to really fine tune and help you in your business and creating the lifestyle of your dreams. And I'll be giving shout outs, so make sure you put your name and your website address if you want me to share that with the community as well. And again, thanks for listening. I'm so excited that you found the Lifestylepreneur podcast, and I can't wait to connect with you and learn more about your business as we continue to grow this community. So again, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Lifestylepreneur podcast. Again, I'm Kris Gilbertson, and I'm committed to bringing you top training from leading lifestylepreneurs all over the world to help you break through and turn your dreams into your ideal lifestyle. And make sure to join us at www.lifestyleacademy.com to receive VIP training from specific guests I interview on the show so that you can really easily start to implement what you've learned from listening. I know we're all busy and sometimes we don't have time to listen to the entire podcast or take notes because I'm always listening on the go. So I like to call it the Lifestyle Cliff Notes to creating your ideal business and make it really simple for you. So those will be sent via the email list. Plus, I also want to connect with you personally, and being on the Lifestyle Academy mailing list is where all the magic happens. We'll host VIP trainings once a month that we can't always bring out on the podcast with even more detailed information. And I also want to connect with you personally. I want to know what's going on in your business and what you need help with and who I can bring on to aid you in creating your ideal lifestyle. And so I'll be asking questions every once in a while that I want you to reply, and I reply back to you personally. So again, until next time, wishing you on your way to achieving all of your dreams. Talk to you soon.